The smell of fresh paint and sawdust hung heavy in the renovated warehouse space as Wendy Nelson adjusted the banner above the entrance to her new boutique fitness studio. She had poured every dollar of her savings, every ounce of her energy, and 3 years of meticulous planning into Nelson Fitness Co. And today marked the official grand opening. Her hands trembled slightly as she smoothed the fabric, not from fear but from pure adrenaline. This was everything she had dreamed about since leaving her corporate marketing job to pursue her passion for wellness and community building. "It looks perfect," her best friend Michelle called from below, holding the ladder steady. "Stop fussing. People are going to love this place." Wendy climbed down and surveyed her creation with pride. The studio occupied the ground floor of a converted textile factory in downtown Portland, featuring floor-to-ceiling windows that flooded the space with natural light. She had personally designed every detail, from the bamboo flooring to the living wall of plants that separated the yoga area from the high-intensity training zone. The boutique model offered specialized classes in everything from dance cardio to strength training, all taught by instructors she had handpicked for their expertise and genuine care for clients. "I just hope we can compete," Wendy said, glancing across the street where construction crews were putting finishing touches on another building. "That place is going to be massive." Michelle followed her gaze. "Yeah, but bigger doesn't mean better. You have heart. You have community. That corporate chain can't replicate what you have built here." The corporate chain in question was Momentum Elite Fitness, a rapidly expanding franchise that had announced its Portland location just 6 months after Wendy had signed her lease. The timing had been devastating. She had watched with growing anxiety as their massive space took shape, complete with a juice bar, physical therapy center, childcare facility, and enough equipment to outfit 3 of her studios. Their marketing budget alone probably exceeded her entire first-year operating costs. The grand opening went better than Wendy had dared to hope. Over 200 people cycled through during the day, taking advantage of the free trial classes. She taught 3 sessions herself, her enthusiasm infectious as she guided participants through her signature fusion workout that combined dance, strength training, and mindfulness. By the time she locked the doors at 9 that evening, her voice was hoarse and her muscles ached, but 53 people had signed up for memberships. 53, Michelle repeated, hugging her. "That is incredible for day one." Wendy allowed herself a moment of celebration before reality set in. "It is a good start, but Momentum Elite opens next week. I need to make sure every single one of those 53 people feels so valued and connected that they would never consider switching." She spent the following week doing exactly that. Wendy learned the names of every member, remembered details about their lives, and sent personalized workout plans. She stayed late to chat with anyone who needed advice or encouragement. She brought in local vendors for a healthy living expo and partnered with a nearby cafe to offer discounted smoothies to members. Nelson Fitness Co. quickly developed a reputation as more than just a gym, it was a community. Then, Momentum Elite opened. Wendy tried not to think about it, but the reality was impossible to ignore. Their grand opening featured celebrity fitness instructors, gift bags worth over $100, and a raffle for a year of free membership. The local news covered it. Influencers posted about it. And memberships at Nelson Fitness Co. stopped growing. What made it worse was that Momentum Elite seemed determined to directly target her business. When she offered a morning boot camp series, they launched an identical program at a lower price point. When she promoted her specialty yoga classes, they brought in a renowned instructor from California for a weekend workshop. Every move she made, they countered with something bigger and flashier. Wendy started arriving at her studio before dawn and leaving after midnight, working frantically to stay competitive. She created new class formats, extended her hours, and stretched her already thin budget to invest in additional equipment. The stress carved shadows under her eyes and turned her stomach into a constant knot of anxiety. 3 months after Momentum Elite opened, Wendy was forced to attend a local business association meeting. She normally enjoyed these networking events, but tonight she was exhausted and not in the mood to make small talk. She grabbed a glass of water and found a quiet corner, reviewing membership numbers on her phone that refused to climb the way she needed them to. "You look like you are having about as much fun as I am." Wendy glanced up to find a man standing nearby, loosening his tie with an expression of weary amusement. He was tall, probably in his early 30s, with dark hair and the kind of confident posture that suggested he was used to commanding attention. There was something disarmingly genuine in his smile, though, that softened what might otherwise have been an intimidating presence. "That obvious," Wendy said, only to someone who is also desperately wishing they were somewhere else. He extended his hand. "Harrison Mitchell, Wendy Nelson." His handshake was firm and warm. "What brings you to the most exciting Thursday evening Portland has to offer?" Harrison laughed. "I just relocated here to oversee a new business venture. My partner insisted I start networking with the local business community. Similar situation, minus the relocating part. I opened a fitness studio a few months ago." Apparently showing your face at these things is important for building community connections. "Fitness studio," Harrison repeated with interest. "That is impressive. The wellness industry is booming but incredibly competitive. What made you take the leap?" There was something about his genuine curiosity that made Wendy relax. They drifted to a less crowded area of the room, and she found herself telling him about her corporate burnout, her passion for helping people discover joy in movement, and her vision for creating a space that focused on holistic health rather than just physical transformation. "That sounds like exactly what people need," Harrison said. "Too many fitness companies are selling an impossible ideal instead of sustainable wellness." "Exactly." Wendy felt a rush of validation. "Although try explaining that when you are competing against a massive franchise with unlimited resources." "Momentum Elite," Harrison guessed. "How did you know?" "They have been aggressively expanding throughout the Pacific Northwest. Very corporate, very polished. But from what I have heard, they lack soul." He paused. "Not that I am an expert. I just pay attention to market trends." They talked for another hour, the conversation flowing easily from business philosophy to favorite Portland restaurants to their shared love of hiking. Harrison had grown up in Seattle, earned an MBA from Stanford, and seemed genuinely passionate about creating companies that balanced profit with purpose. He was thoughtful, funny, and refreshingly down to earth, despite the expensive watch and tailored suit that suggested significant success. "I should let you get back to networking," Wendy finally said, though she was reluctant to end the conversation. "I am sure there are more important people for you to meet than a small business owner struggling to stay afloat." "This has been the most genuine conversation I've had in months," Harrison said. "And for what it is worth, I think your studio is going to make it. Passion and authenticity always win in the long run. I hope you are right." Wendy pulled out a business card. "If you are looking for a good workout while you are in Portland, we would love to have you." Harrison studied the card, something flickering across his face too quickly for her to interpret. "I appreciate that. Good luck with everything, Wendy." She left the event feeling lighter than she had in weeks. There had been something energizing about talking to someone who understood the challenges of building something meaningful in a competitive market. And if she was honest with herself, there had been a spark of attraction too. The way Harrison had listened with complete focus, the intelligence in his eyes, the hint of something vulnerable beneath his polished exterior, it all added up to someone she would very much like to see again. Over the following weeks, Wendy threw herself into making Nelson Fitness Co. indispensable to her members. She started a scholarship program for people who could not afford full membership fees. She organized outdoor group runs on weekends. She brought in guest speakers to discuss nutrition, mental health, and injury prevention. Slowly, steadily, her membership numbers began climbing again. Then the price war started. Momentum Elite slashed their rates by 30%, making their membership cheaper than Wendy's despite offering far more amenities. The marketing materials appeared everywhere, emphasizing the value proposition. Within a week, Wendy had lost 15 members to the promotion, each cancellation a small knife to her heart. She knew she could not compete on price. Her margins were already razor thin. But she also could not just accept being driven out of business. Wendy scheduled an emergency meeting with her accountant and attorney, trying to figure out her options. The consensus was grim. Without significant capital infusion, she would need to either match the pricing or develop a completely unique offering that justified her higher rates. What about premium personal training packages? Her accountant suggested. Market to clients who want elite, individualized attention. It was not a bad idea. Wendy spent the next several days developing a high-touch coaching program that combined fitness, nutrition, and lifestyle planning. She priced it at a premium level, gambling that there were enough people who would pay for truly personalized service. Then, she reached out to her most dedicated members and several local doctors to generate referrals. The program launched on a Monday. On Tuesday, Momentum Elite announced their own premium coaching service at half the price. Wendy stared at the email promotion in disbelief. It was as if they had someone inside her business, watching her every move. The coincidence was too perfect, too targeted. She felt paranoid even thinking it, but she could not shake the feeling that she was being deliberately sabotaged. "This is insane," Michelle said when Wendy called her in frustration. "How are they anticipating everything you do? I don't know. Either they have the same consultant everyone else uses, or they are paying way too much attention to a tiny competitor who shouldn't even be on their radar. Unless you are more of a threat than you realize." Wendy wanted to believe that, but the evidence suggested otherwise. Her membership had stabilized around 200 people respectable, but nowhere near enough to threaten a national franchise. She was surviving, not thriving, and the constant battle was exhausting her. She decided to take a Sunday off, something she had not done in months. Wendy drove to Forest Park and hit one of her favorite trails, hoping the towering trees and physical exertion would clear her head. The morning was crisp and clear, the kind of Pacific Northwest perfection that had made her fall in love with Portland in the first place. About 3 miles in, she rounded a bend and nearly collided with another hiker coming from the opposite direction. "Wendy," she blinked in surprise. "Harrison." He looked different in hiking clothes, more relaxed, though still somehow polished in that effortless way some people managed. His face lit up with genuine pleasure at seeing her. "I was hoping I might run into you again, though not quite this literally," Harrison said. "How have you been?" "How is the studio?" "Surviving," Wendy said honestly. "It has been a challenging few months." They fell into step together, heading up the trail. Harrison was easy to talk to, and before long Wendy found herself venting about the competitive pressures, the price war, and her growing paranoia that Momentum Elite had made it their mission to destroy her business specifically. "That does seem oddly targeted," Harrison agreed, his expression troubled. "Have you considered reaching out to their regional management? Sometimes these franchise locations operate with a lot of autonomy, and corporate might not approve of such aggressive tactics." "I wouldn't even know where to start. It's not like they list their corporate strategy team on the website." "True." Harrison was quiet for a moment. "For what it is worth, your approach is the right one. Building community, focusing on relationships, creating real value, that is how sustainable businesses are built. The flashy stuff fades. I just need to survive long enough for the flashy stuff to fade." They hiked in comfortable silence for a while, the trail climbing steadily through dense forest. Wendy was acutely aware of Harrison beside her, the easy athleticism of his stride, the way he seemed completely present in the moment. When they reached a viewpoint overlooking the city, they stopped to catch their breath and take in the panorama. "Can I ask you something?" Harrison said. "And feel free to tell me this is none of my business." "Okay. Why does this matter so much to you?" "I mean, obviously it is your business and your livelihood, but I get the sense it is more than that." Wendy considered the question. "When I was working in corporate marketing, I was good at my job but miserable. Every day felt empty. I kept thinking there had to be more to life than selling products I did not care about to people who did not need them. Then my mom got sick, breast cancer, and I watched her go through treatment. The only thing that helped her mentally and emotionally was the gentle yoga class she took twice a week. She made friends there, found strength there. That teacher gave her something doctors could not, and I realized that was what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to create a space where people found not just fitness but community and support and joy." "How is your mom now?" Harrison asked gently. 5 years cancer-free. She still takes that yoga class, and she comes to mine whenever she visits from Seattle." "Then you have already succeeded at what matters most." The simple validation brought unexpected tears to Wendy's eyes. "Thank you. I needed to hear that." They exchanged phone numbers before parting ways at the trailhead, and Wendy drove home with a lightness in her chest that had nothing to do with business and everything to do with the way Harrison had looked at her, really looked at her, when she talked about her dreams. Over the next few weeks, they started texting regularly. Harrison would send her funny observations about Portland, recommendations for restaurants, articles about small business innovation. Wendy would share highlights from her classes, photos of her studio dog Bruno, who had become the unofficial mascot, complaints about the latest Momentum Elite tactic. Their conversations were easy and engaging, and she found herself thinking about him at odd moments throughout the day. When Harrison finally asked her to dinner, Wendy said yes immediately. They met at a cozy Italian place in the Pearl District. Harrison was waiting outside when she arrived, and his face broke into a warm smile that made her stomach flutter. He had made reservations at a quiet corner table, and they settled in with wine and conversation that flowed as easily as it had on the hiking trail. "I have to confess something," Harrison said over the main course. "I've been wanting to ask you out since we met at that networking event. But I was not sure if it would be appropriate given that we are both business owners who might end up collaborating or competing at some point. What changed your mind?" "I decided that passing up the chance to spend more time with someone I find fascinating would be the bigger regret." His eyes held hers. "I really like you, Wendy. You're passionate and genuine, and you light up when you talk about your work. That is incredibly attractive." Wendy felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I really like you too. You are one of the few people I have met who seems to actually understand the balance between business success and staying true to your values." It is not always easy, Harrison admitted. There is a lot of pressure to prioritize profit over everything else. But I have seen what happens when companies lose sight of their purpose. They might succeed financially in the short term, but they become hollow, soulless. They talked late into the evening until the restaurant staff was politely stacking chairs around them. Harrison walked Wendy to her car, and when he leaned in to kiss her goodnight, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. His lips were soft, the kiss sweet and unhurried, full of promise. "I would really like to see you again," Harrison said. "Tomorrow," Wendy suggested, half joking. "I wish I could. I have a brutal week ahead, back-to-back meetings for this new venture I am overseeing. But Friday, I could cook you dinner at my place." They made plans, and Wendy drove home with a giddy smile she could not suppress. It had been years since she had felt this kind of connection with someone. Harrison was successful but humble, confident but kind. He seemed to genuinely care about the things she cared about. It felt almost too good to be true. The rest of the week crawled by. Wendy taught her classes, managed her staff, and worked on a new marketing campaign, all while counting down the hours until Friday. She and Harrison texted constantly, the messages growing increasingly flirtatious. Friday afternoon, Wendy left the studio early to go home and change. She had just stepped out of the shower when Michelle called. "Turn on Channel 8, Michelle said without preamble. "Now." "What? Why?" "Just do it. Business news segment." Wendy wrapped a towel around herself and found the remote, clicking to the local news station. They were running a profile on successful young executives in Portland, and her stomach dropped as Harrison's face filled the screen. Harrison Mitchell, 32, recently relocated to Portland to oversee the Pacific Northwest expansion of Momentum Elite Fitness, the reporter said. As Chief Operating Officer of the rapidly growing franchise, Mitchell has been credited with the company's aggressive growth strategy and ability to dominate new markets. Wendy's entire body went cold. Mitchell says the key to Momentum Elite's success is their data-driven approach to understanding the competition and delivering superior value. The reporter continued. Harrison's voice played over footage of the massive facility across from her studio. "We study what local operators are doing right and what they are doing wrong, then we deliver a better overall experience." The segment continued, but Wendy had stopped processing the words. Her mind was racing, replaying every conversation she had had with Harrison. Every detail she had shared about her business struggles, her strategies, her plans. She had handed him everything he needed to destroy her, thinking she was talking to a sympathetic fellow entrepreneur. He was not her peer. He was her enemy. The person responsible for every challenge she had faced for the past 6 months, and she had been falling in love with him. Wendy's phone started buzzing. Harrison calling. She stared at his name on the screen, fury and betrayal churning in her stomach. She answered. "Wendy, I can explain. You are the COO of Momentum Elite." Her voice was flat. "The company that has been systematically trying to put me out of business." "Yes, but everything I told you, every strategy, every plan, every vulnerability, you used all of it against me." "No." "Wendy, please listen. I never shared anything you told me with my team. I know how this looks, but you have to believe me. The timing, our campaigns, those were already in development before I met you. I swear." "How convenient." Wendy was surprised by how steady her voice remained when she felt like she was shattering inside. Was any of it real? Or was I just a fun side project? Get close to the competition, gather intelligence, sleep with the enemy. Don't say that. Harrison's voice cracked. "Everything between us was real, is real. My feelings for you have nothing to do with business." "Your feelings," Wendy laughed bitterly. "You don't have feelings, you have strategies. Well, congratulations. You played this perfectly. I actually believed you cared. I do care. Wendy, please let me come over and explain in person. This is all wrong. You have to let me. She hung up and blocked his number, then sank onto her couch, shaking. Michelle arrived 20 minutes later, letting herself in with her key, and found Wendy staring blankly at the wall. "Oh, honey," Michelle said, pulling her into a hug. "I am so stupid," Wendy whispered. "I should have known. Why would someone like him be interested in someone like me? It was all an act. You are not stupid. You are trusting and genuine, and he took advantage of that. He is the terrible person here, not you." But Wendy could not shake the humiliation. She had been so careful with her business, so protective of her vision, and then she had handed all her secrets to the one person positioned to destroy her. Even if Harrison had not deliberately used what she told him, and she was not sure she believed that the betrayal of his hidden identity was devastating. Harrison tried repeatedly to contact her over the weekend. When he could not reach her by phone, he sent emails. Texts from different numbers even showed up at her apartment. Wendy refused to see him or respond. She could not bear to hear more lies, more justifications. On Monday morning, she returned to her studio determined to channel her anger into action. If Harrison and Momentum Elite wanted war, she would give them one. She might not have their resources, but she had something they did not. She actually cared about her clients as human beings. Wendy doubled down on the personal touches that made Nelson Fitness Co. special. She started a morning childcare program for parents who struggled to make classes. She created a sliding scale payment option so no one would be excluded for financial reasons. She organized a community service day where members volunteered at a local food bank together. Every decision was driven by one question: what would genuinely help her members' lives? The response was overwhelming. Members started bringing friends. The local media ran a story about her community service initiative. People who had switched to Momentum Elite started coming back, saying they missed the personal atmosphere. Within a month, Wendy had not only recovered the members she had lost, but added 50 more. It should have felt like victory, but everything was tainted by Harrison's betrayal. Wendy threw herself into work, staying busy enough that she did not have to think about how much she missed him, because that was the worst part. She did miss him. She missed their conversations, his insights, the way he made her laugh. She missed the possibility of what they could have been if he had been honest. 6 weeks after she had blocked him, Wendy was locking up the studio late one evening when a car pulled up outside. She recognized Harrison immediately as he stepped out, and her heart lurched painfully. "Please don't leave," he called out. "I know you don't want to see me, but I am asking you for 5 minutes. If you still want me to disappear after that, I will respect your wishes." Every instinct told Wendy to walk away, but something in his voice made her pause. He looked terrible, tired, and drawn in a way that mirrored how she felt. "5 minutes," she said coldly. "Talk." Harrison took a deep breath. "I should have told you who I was the moment we met. I know that. But I am going to be completely honest now, even if it makes me look worse. That night at the networking event, I knew exactly who you were before I introduced myself. I had seen your business plan when my team was evaluating the local market. And yes, I approached you deliberately because I wanted to understand the person behind Nelson Fitness Co." Wendy's jaw clenched, but she let him continue. "But everything that happened after that first conversation was real. Wendy, you captivated me. Your passion, your integrity, your vision for what fitness could be, it made me question everything about how I had been operating. I kept meaning to tell you who I was, but I was terrified that if you knew, I would lose you before anything really started. So you lied by omission." "Yes. And that was wrong. but I need you to understand that I never used anything you told me against you. The competitive strategies you were seeing, those were developed months before we met. I actually stopped attending strategy meetings where your studio was discussed because I did not want any suspicion that I was manipulating the situation. Why should I believe you? Because I can prove it. Harrison pulled out a folder. These are time-stamped planning documents showing when each Momentum Elite initiative was conceived. Every single one predates our first meeting. I am violating about 6 company policies by showing you these, but I need you to know I am telling the truth. Wendy hesitated, then took the folder. She flipped through the documents, seeing dates and approval signatures that seemed to support his claim. It did not make the betrayal hurt less, but it shifted something slightly. Even if you did not directly sabotage me, you still lied about who you were, she said. You let me fall for you while hiding that you were my biggest competitor. I know, and I am sorrier than I can express. Harrison's voice was raw. But Wendy, I am falling for you too. In fact, I think I am already way past falling. These past 6 weeks have been miserable. Nothing feels right without you. You don't get to say that. You don't get to make this about your feelings when you are the one who broke my trust. You are absolutely right. I am not asking you to forgive me or take me back. I just need you to know that what we had was real for me. You were never a strategy or a game. You are the most incredible person I have ever met, and I ruined everything because I was a coward. Wendy felt tears threatening and furiously blinked them back. Your 5 minutes are up. Harrison nodded, defeat settling over his features. Okay. I will leave you alone, but one more thing, I am resigning from Momentum Elite. That shocked her. What? I gave my notice 2 weeks ago. I am done with corporate fitness. You were right that night at dinner. Companies that lose sight of their purpose become hollow. I have been hollowing myself out for years, chasing growth metrics and market share. Meeting you showed me what I was missing. So I am starting over. I am going to figure out how to build something that matters, something with soul, the way you have. He turned to leave, and Wendy was surprised by the panic that seized her. Wait. Harrison stopped, hope flickering across his face. Why are you really resigning? She asked. Be honest. Because I can't keep working for a company that is trying to crush yours. Because I have realized that aggressive competition and market domination are not what I want to spend my life doing. And because even if you never forgive me, I need to become someone worthy of the person you thought I was. The sincerity in his voice made Wendy's remaining defenses crack. She had been so focused on her anger and hurt that she had not let herself acknowledge a simple truth. She was still in love with him. The betrayal had been devastating precisely because her feelings had been real, were still real despite everything. I need time, she said finally. I can't just pretend this did not happen, but I believe you that you did not deliberately sabotage me, and I believe that your feelings were real. Does that mean there is a chance? Harrison asked carefully. Eventually, I don't know, maybe, but you would need to be patient. And completely transparent. No more secrets, no more omissions. I need to be able to trust you. Anything, I will do anything. They started slowly. Coffee once a week, in public places where Wendy felt safe. Harrison was true to his word about transparency, answering every question she asked about his past decisions and business practices. He told her about his last day at Momentum Elite, how he had walked away from a 7-figure salary and equity package because staying felt morally wrong. What will you do now? Wendy asked during one of their coffee meetings. Honestly, I am not sure yet. I have been networking with people in the wellness space who are focused on accessibility and community health. There is a need for affordable fitness options in underserved neighborhoods. I am exploring whether I can help develop something in that space. Wendy studied him across the table. The expensive suits were gone, replaced by casual clothes that made him seem more approachable. But the bigger change was in his demeanor. He seemed lighter, more at peace. "You look different," she observed. "Happier." "I feel different, terrified about giving up financial security, but also more alive than I have been in years." He met her eyes. "You changed my life, Wendy. Whether or not we end up together, I need you to know that." The weeks of coffee dates turned into dinner, then a hike, then a visit to the farmer's market where they walked hand in hand, and it felt achingly right. Wendy's walls were crumbling, but she fought to maintain some protective distance. Trust, once broken, did not heal overnight. Then came the night Harrison invited her to see the project he had been working on. They drove to a neighborhood in East Portland that had few fitness options and lots of families struggling with poverty and food insecurity. Harrison parked in front of a community center that had seen better days. "I have been volunteering here for the past month," he explained. "They have a multipurpose room that is barely used. I proposed converting it into a free fitness space for community members. Basic equipment, volunteer instructors, sliding scale fees for more advanced classes that would fund the free offerings." He unlocked the door and led her inside. The space was humble but thoughtfully arranged. Someone had painted an inspiring mural on one wall. Donated yoga mats were stacked neatly in a corner. A simple sound system was set up for classes. "We officially open next week," Harrison said. "I am not running it. There is an amazing woman named Paula who manages the community center, and this is her vision. But I helped with startup capital, and I have been recruiting instructors. I actually wondered if you might be willing to teach a class or two occasionally. No pressure, but these folks could really benefit from your approach to wellness." Wendy walked through the space, emotion building in her chest. This was not about profit or market share. This was about genuine service, about using privilege and resources to create opportunity. This was Harrison putting his values into action. "I would love to teach here," she said, turning to face him. "Harrison, this is incredible. This is exactly the kind of thing the world needs more of. I learned from the best." He moved closer, tentative. "Wendy, I know I still have a long way to go to fully earn back your trust. But I am trying to be the person you deserve. Someone who builds up instead of tearing down. Someone worthy of your respect." "You already have my respect," Wendy said softly, "and my forgiveness. I have been holding on to hurt because I was scared, but the truth is that I forgive you. What you did was wrong, but you have shown me through your actions who you really are, and I like that person. Actually, I more than like that person." "What are you saying?" "I am saying that I want to try again. For real this time, with complete honesty and no secrets." She reached up to touch his face. "I am saying that I am in love with you, Harrison Mitchell, and I want to see where this goes." Harrison kissed her then, deep and tender and full of relief. When they finally broke apart, he was smiling wider than she had ever seen. "I love you too," he said. "I have loved you probably since that first night, though I was too much of an idiot to fully recognize it. You have made me want to be better, do better. You have woken up parts of me I did not know were sleeping." They sat on the floor of the community center, backs against the wall, talking late into the night. Harrison told her about his family in Seattle, the pressure he had felt to pursue prestige and money, how empty his achievements had felt despite their outward success. Wendy shared her own fears about failure, her occasional doubt that she was making a real difference, the loneliness of entrepreneurship. "You are making a massive difference," Harrison insisted. "Every person who walks into your studio walks out stronger, not just physically but emotionally. I have seen it. That is real impact." In the months that followed, Wendy and Harrison built something rare, a partnership grounded in shared values and mutual respect. He became a fixture at Nelson Fitness Co. Though never in a professional capacity, he would come for classes, help set up for special events, and charm everyone with his genuine enthusiasm for what Wendy had created. She, in turn, taught regular classes at the community center he had helped establish, building relationships with members who reminded her why she had started this journey in the first place. Momentum Elite remained across the street, a massive presence that Wendy no longer found threatening. Once she stopped viewing them as an existential threat, she realized there was room for both businesses. They served different needs, attracted different clients. Some people wanted the bells and whistles of a full-service facility. Others wanted the intimacy and personal connection of Nelson Fitness Co. There was no need for it to be a battle. Harrison launched a nonprofit focused on creating accessible fitness options in underserved communities throughout Portland. The model he had pioneered at the East Portland Community Center proved replicable, and within a year, he had helped establish 5 additional locations. Wendy served on the board, contributing her expertise on program design and instructor training. Watching Harrison pour his considerable talents into genuinely helpful work was deeply satisfying. One evening, nearly 2 years after their first meeting, Harrison picked Wendy up after her last class with an unusual request. "Remember that viewpoint we hiked to? The one where we had that long talk about your mom?" "Of course. I want to go back there. Right now. I know it is getting dark, but I have headlamps and I promise it will be worth it." Curious and slightly suspicious of his nervous energy, Wendy agreed. They drove to Forest Park and started up the familiar trail, their headlamps casting bobbing circles of light through the darkening forest. By the time they reached the viewpoint, full night had fallen, and the city spread out below them like a blanket of stars. "Okay, what is this about?" Wendy asked, laughing at Harrison's obvious nerves. He took both her hands. 2 years ago, I was a person I am not particularly proud of. I was successful by conventional measures but empty inside. I had lost touch with what mattered. And then I met you and everything changed. You challenged me, inspired me, made me want to be worthy of you. You showed me what it means to build something with integrity and soul. "Harrison, let me finish before I lose my courage." He smiled shakily. "Wendy Nelson, you are my best friend, my inspiration, my home. I love your passion and your kindness, and the way you light up when you talk about your dreams. I love how you remember every client's name and how you cry during sappy movies, and how you always order extra bread at restaurants. I love the life we have built together and I want to keep building it forever." He pulled a small box from his jacket pocket and dropped to one knee. "Will you marry me?" Wendy's hands flew to her mouth as happy tears spilled over. "Yes, of course yes." The ring was simple and perfect, a sapphire surrounded by tiny diamonds. Harrison slipped it onto her finger with shaking hands, then stood and swept her into a kiss that tasted like joy and promise and coming home. They were married 6 months later in a ceremony that perfectly reflected their values. The wedding took place at Nelson Fitness Co. The studio transformed with flowers and lights, but still recognizably, the space Wendy had poured her heart into. Members served as ushers. Her instructors did readings. Harrison's nonprofit beneficiaries made up a volunteer choir that made everyone cry with their heartfelt performance. During his vows, Harrison's voice cracked with emotion. "You saved me in ways you will never fully understand. I was living a life that looked successful but felt meaningless. You showed me another way. You showed me that business can be a force for good, that success measured in human connection matters more than success measured in dollars, that building up is more satisfying than tearing down. I promise to spend the rest of my life being worthy of your faith in me." Wendy's own vows were equally heartfelt. When I opened this studio, I thought I was just starting a business, but I was really opening myself up to possibilities I had not imagined, including the possibility of finding a partner who challenges me to be better while loving me exactly as I am. You have shown me that mistakes do not define us. What matters is how we grow from them. I love the person you have become, and I love that we became better people together. The reception featured healthy but delicious food from the cafe Wendy had partnered with, music from a friend's band, and dance breaks led by her instructors. It was joyful and intimate and perfectly them. Harrison's career continued to thrive in its new direction. His nonprofit expanded beyond Portland to other cities in the Pacific Northwest, bringing accessible fitness programming to communities that desperately needed it. He became a sought-after speaker on conscious capitalism and using business skills for social good. But he always maintained that Wendy was the source of his transformation, the person who had shown him what truly mattered. Nelson Fitness Co. grew steadily, though Wendy deliberately kept it to a manageable size. She opened 2 additional locations in Portland neighborhoods that lacked quality fitness options, each one maintaining the intimate, community-focused approach that made the original special. She hired managers she trusted to run the day-to-day operations, which freed her to focus on program development and teaching the classes she loved most. 3 years into their marriage, Wendy discovered she was pregnant. The news sent both of them into a tailspin of excited terror. They spent months preparing, reading every parenting book they could find, and having long conversations about the values they wanted to instill in their child. Their daughter Maya arrived on a rainy October morning, and Harrison cried as he held her for the first time. "She is perfect. You are perfect. I am the luckiest person alive." Parenthood was harder than either of them anticipated, but also more rewarding. They figured it out together, splitting nighttime duties and supporting each other through the exhaustion and overwhelm. Wendy was back teaching classes within 3 months, bringing Maya along in a carrier. Until she was old enough for the childcare program Wendy had established at the studio. Harrison adjusted his work schedule to be home more, learning that being present for his family was its own kind of success. Maya grew into a bright, energetic toddler who loved movement and music. She became a fixture at both the studio and the community fitness centers, charming everyone with her enthusiasm. Watching her daughter grow up in an environment focused on joy and health and community made Wendy feel like everything had come full circle. One evening, when Maya was 2 and Wendy was very obviously pregnant with their second child, Harrison found her sitting in the studio after hours, looking contemplative. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, settling beside her. "Just remembering. That first day I opened this place, I was so scared. I kept thinking about everything that could go wrong. I never imagined everything that could go right." "Like what?" "Like building a business I am genuinely proud of, like creating community and helping people, like meeting you." She leaned against him. "Especially like meeting you. Even though I was a corporate tool trying to put you out of business, even though, maybe especially because, if you had been perfect from the start, you would not have had room to grow. And watching you transform into the person you are now, that has been one of the great privileges of my life." Harrison kissed the top of her head. "I was thinking about that networking event recently. How I almost did not go because I was tired and annoyed. What if I had stayed home? What if I had missed meeting you? But you did not, and I did not, and we found each other exactly when we needed to." Their son James arrived a few months later, completing their family in a way that felt absolutely right. 2 kids felt like plenty, and both Wendy and Harrison were content to focus their energy on raising Maya and James while continuing their work in the fitness and wellness space. As the years passed, their story became something of a legend in Portland's business community. The CEO and the small business owner who went from competitors to partners, whose rivalry had turned into romance, whose willingness to grow and change had created something far better than either could have achieved alone. They were occasionally asked to speak at business schools or conferences about conscious capitalism, partnership, and building purpose-driven enterprises. The truth is that Wendy made me better, Harrison always said during these talks. I thought I knew what success looked like, but I was measuring the wrong things. Real success is going to bed at night knowing you made a positive difference. It is building something that serves people rather than exploiting them. It is having the courage to admit when you are on the wrong path and choosing a better direction. Wendy would add, and real partnership is about supporting each other's growth, even when it is uncomfortable. Harrison and I challenged each other to be more than we thought we could be. That is what great relationships do. They expand what you think is possible. Nelson Fitness Co. celebrated its 10th anniversary with a massive community event that brought together thousands of current and former members. People shared stories about how the studio had changed their lives, about friendships formed and strength discovered and confidence built. Wendy stood in the middle of it all, surrounded by her family and community, and felt overwhelming gratitude. Harrison's nonprofit had grown into a regional powerhouse, operating fitness and wellness programming in 23 underserved communities across Washington, Oregon, and Northern California. The model had proven so successful that other organizations were beginning to replicate it. Harrison had built a strong leadership team that allowed him to work reasonable hours while still driving strategic direction. Maya grew into a thoughtful, athletic 10-year-old who was obsessed with gymnastics and social justice, a combination that made perfect sense given her parents. James was a sweet 7-year-old who loved reading and swimming and helping his dad cook dinner. Both kids understood that their parents worked hard but also prioritized family time. Wendy and Harrison had learned to set boundaries, to protect their evenings and weekends, to model the work-life balance they wanted their children to have. Sometimes, Wendy would think about that younger version of herself, terrified and determined as she prepared for her grand opening. She wished she could go back and tell that woman that everything was going to work out better than she dreamed, that the corporate chain moving in across the street would inadvertently bring her the love of her life, that business success was possible without sacrificing integrity, that building something meaningful was worth every moment of struggle and doubt. But then again, maybe that younger Wendy needed to take the journey herself, to learn through experience that resilience and authenticity and community were their own rewards. Some lessons could not be taught, only lived. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Harrison surprised Wendy with a weekend getaway to a coastal resort. They left the kids with Wendy's parents and drove to Cannon Beach, where they spent 2 days hiking, eating good food, and reconnecting without the constant pull of work and family responsibilities. Their last evening, they walked along the beach at sunset, the massive rock formations casting long shadows across the sand. Harrison pulled Wendy close, and they stood watching the waves in comfortable silence. "You ever regret it?" Wendy asked suddenly. "Walking away from the corporate career, the money, all of that?" "Not for a single second." "Do you regret staying small instead of franchising Nelson Fitness Co.? You could have. Plenty of people have approached you." "No. I built exactly what I wanted to build. And I get to work with you on the nonprofit, which is my way of scaling impact without scaling my business." She turned to face him. We chose a harder path, but it was the right path. I am proud of us. I am proud of us too, and I am still madly in love with you, by the way, more than ever. Even though I am 40 and have stretch marks and spend most evenings in yoga pants with spit up on my shoulder, especially because of all that. You are real and honest and present. You are exactly who you are with no pretense. That is the sexiest thing in the world. They kissed as the sun sank below the horizon. Two people who had started as adversaries and become partners in every sense of the word. Their journey had not been simple or straightforward, but it had been theirs. They had built businesses that mattered, raised children with strong values, and created a relationship grounded in growth and honesty and deep, abiding love. Years later, as Wendy prepared to step back from the day-to-day operations of Nelson Fitness Co. to focus on writing and consulting, she reflected on how much her life had changed since that terrifying and exciting grand opening day. She had set out to build a business and ended up building a life, a full, rich, meaningful life surrounded by community and purpose and love. Harrison had long since handed off leadership of his nonprofit to a brilliant successor, though he remained active on the board. These days, he taught business ethics at Portland State University and consulted with social enterprises on sustainable growth models. He loved teaching, loved watching young people discover that business could be a force for good. Their kids were teenagers now, Maya finishing high school and James not far behind. Both had inherited their parents' values around service and community. Maya wanted to be a physical therapist working with underserved populations. James was passionate about sustainable urban design. Wendy and Harrison had not pushed them toward any particular path, but they had modeled what it looked like to build a career around purpose rather than prestige. Sometimes, at family dinners, the kids would ask their parents to tell the story of how they met. Harrison and Wendy would exchange knowing smiles before launching into the networking event. The hiking trail, the business rivalry neither of them had acknowledged, the painful moment of discovery, the slow rebuilding of trust. So basically, Dad was your enemy and then you fell in love, Maya summarized once. That is very enemies to lovers. It was not quite that dramatic, Wendy protested, laughing. It was a little that dramatic, Harrison corrected. Your mother was convinced I was corporate evil incarnate for a while there. You kind of were, though, James pointed out. You were trying to put Mom out of business. Fair point. But I like to think I have made up for it since then. The kids would roll their eyes affectionately at their parents' banter, but Wendy could see they appreciated the story. It taught them that people could grow and change, that mistakes did not have to define you, that love sometimes showed up in unexpected packages. On the 20th anniversary of the day, Wendy opened Nelson Fitness Co. The business community threw a celebration honoring her contributions to Portland's wellness landscape. Awards were presented, speeches were made. Current and former members shared testimonials about how the studio had changed their trajectories. It was overwhelming and humbling and deeply satisfying. Harrison gave a speech that made Wendy cry. 20 years ago, a remarkable woman named Wendy Nelson had a vision. She wanted to create space where people did not just work out but became their best selves, where community mattered more than membership numbers, where every single person who walked through the door was valued and seen. That vision transformed not just her business but an entire industry. It certainly transformed me. Wendy showed all of us that success and integrity are not opposing forces, that you can do well by doing good. That business can be a healing force in the world. I am honored to be her husband, her partner, and her biggest fan. Later that night, back at home with their shoes kicked off and the awards sitting on the counter, Wendy and Harrison curled up on the couch together. 20 years, Wendy marveled. Sometimes it feels like yesterday and sometimes it feels like a lifetime ago. Both, Harrison agreed. We have lived a lot of life in these 20 years. Do you remember what you said to me that first night we met? About passion and authenticity winning in the long run. I do. Did I end up being right? You did. But I think we both had to learn what that really meant. It is not about winning against other people. It is about staying true to your values regardless of external pressure. That is the real victory. Harrison pulled her closer. You taught me that. Before I met you, I measured everything in market share and revenue growth. You showed me different metrics: lives changed, communities strengthened, purpose fulfilled. Those are the numbers that actually matter. They sat in comfortable silence, reflecting on the improbable journey that had brought them from adversaries to partners to parents to this moment. Their story could have gone so differently. If Harrison had not approached Wendy that night, if she had not given him a second chance, if either of them had let fear or pride override their growing connection. But they had made different choices, braver choices, and those choices had created a life neither could have imagined alone. The studio would continue operating for many more years, eventually passed on to the next generation of passionate wellness advocates who shared Wendy's vision. The nonprofit would keep expanding, bringing accessible fitness and wellness programming to more and more communities that needed it. Maya and James would go on to build their own meaningful careers, carrying forward the values they had absorbed from watching their parents choose purpose over profit at every turn. But all of that was still to come. For now, on this anniversary evening, Wendy and Harrison simply sat together in the home they had built, surrounded by evidence of a life well lived: family photos, kids' artwork, awards that represented impact rather than ego. Outside, Portland sparkled in the darkness, full of people whose lives had been touched by their work and their example. I would choose this every time, Wendy said softly. All of it, even the hard parts, this life with you. Every time, Harrison echoed. Forever. They had started as competitors, each seeing the other as an obstacle to overcome. But competition had evolved into respect, respect into friendship, friendship into love. They had built businesses that mattered and a relationship that sustained them. They had proven that success did not require sacrificing your values, that growth was possible without losing your soul, that the person who seemed like your enemy might actually be your perfect partner. It was, Wendy reflected, a love story for the ages. Not because it was perfect or simple, but because it was real. They had made mistakes and learned from them. They had hurt each other and forgiven. They had grown together into better versions of themselves. And in the end, they had created something beautiful: a life, a family, a legacy of purpose-driven work that would ripple out far beyond their years. The CEO and the entrepreneur, the competitor and the rival, the enemy who became the great love. Their story reminded everyone who heard it that transformation was possible, that second chances were real, and that love could bloom in the most unexpected places if you were brave enough to let it.